following is a presentation of the iRacing Esports Network.
A championship fight is sometimes compared to a battlefield. The drivers enter the scene with at least a vague idea of the lay of the land, but never fully knowing how it will look until we get there. As the weeks go by, we get a better and better idea of the landscape, and that landscape today is the gorgeous hills of Italy. The importance of qualifying well was illustrated graphically last week at Zandvoort, and Imola is likely to give us yet another reminder. Will we get another nail-biter? We'll find out soon as we get ready to watch Round 8 of the Lotus 49 World Cup, and you'll see it all live here on the global SimRacing channel and the iRacing Esports Network. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is Johan Vandenbelt. Behind the scenes is our director, the Dr. Amjad Yaman, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Johan, Imola's chicanes are known for being pretty tricky and making overtaking frustratingly hard, but what are some of the more enjoyable aspects of this track?
I mean, as a racer, I love to compete at Imola. It has so many great sections, like the run towards Acque Minerali, the downhill section towards Rivazza, or slinging your car through Variante Villeneuve. But you're absolutely right, Joe. The chicanes make it a lot harder to overtake here. The chicanes weren't always featured, however. They were added to increase the safety of the track. Imola was originally constructed in 1953 and hosted both motorcycle and car races. 10 years after its opening, the circuit hosted its first unofficial Formula 1 race that was won by, who else? Jim Clark in a Lotus. Imola and danger have always been synonymous with each other, which resulted in several track adaptations throughout the years. The last change in 2007 removed the Variante Bassa, a chicane between the first and last corner of the track, creating a long straight and an extra overtaking opportunity going into Tamburello. This is probably the best overtaking opportunity around this 4.9 kilometer track, and to see how this looks like from the driver's point of view, let's hop on board our GSRC Lotus 49 for a lap around Imola.
All right, we've got Ben Zocco in the GSRC Lotus 49, so let's do a lap around Imola. Coming down the front stretch, even though Tamburello is a good passing opportunity, the long braking zones in this car means you have to deal with a kinked entry. That just ups the difficulty of an already tricky 3-apex chicane. Try to hug the inside of the second apex to open up the final one, because in the 49 it's not quite flat out. From there, it's a short stretch up to Villeneuve. With its fast entry on the first half, drivers will really be testing the limits and the balance of the car. Switch sides quickly on the exit to line up Tosa. This hairpin will really reveal who is good with their right foot, because finding traction off the corner will make a big difference up this steep hill. And again, unique to the 49, the crest makes the car light, so with a slight curve, you'll be lifting early to set yourself up for Piratella. Getting the nose down to the apex of this bend is deceptively hard. Expect a lot of drivers to be a little wide mid-corner. Then you plunge down into the valley of Acque Minerali. You're braking through the first half, trying to get the car settled, and then really wallowing up for the second half. Be sure not to go wide on the exit of this corner, because iRacing gives you a slowdown penalty if you go too far off track. This is another critical corner exit, because up next is the Alta chicane, where drivers will often be on the attack. Thing is, I wouldn't recommend going through here too wide because of how narrow and slow the chicane is. From there, you put your right foot down yet again and follow the track downhill towards Rivazza. The downhill braking means that you'll be getting to the binders a little early, or else find yourself taking a trip through the gravel. There's just a small squirt of the power into the second part of this corner, but you really need to focus on your run out of here. The pit straight is the longest acceleration zone of the track, so hesitate to the power and you're going to get mobbed by everyone behind you. But hopefully, you kept it all together and have now finished a lap around Imola.
You see a lap around Imola, and conditions a little bit more bright and cheery than what we have here today. Overcast down on the track, but certainly not overcast in the championship, because it is very, very tight. As we look at the drivers' standings, you can see only 2 points between Trangarade and Price. Now that could change, because we understand Price has been battling a little bit of illness in multiple ways, including his elbow being not very well, which when it comes to driving, that's kind of important. Now, Michel Dudignon is on a charge. You can see he gains one spot and overtakes Nicola Cocci. But Cocci is looking very fast here at one of his home tracks, so he could yet overtake Dudignon yet again. He's only 4 points behind him. Mick Claridge continues to climb, having beaten Michel last round, but didn't take the win. If you haven't watched that race, definitely go see at least the end. It was a thriller. And that's our top 5, with drop weeks now looming after this race. Let's take a look at the F2 Championship. Johan, what are the standings over there?
Yeah, well, there's one name that has been leading the Formula 2 Championship basically the whole season so far, and that's Marcellus Breuning. The American has scored 48 points so far this season, and he's leading the rest by 16 points. Incredible gap so far from Marcellus. But behind him, it's extremely exciting. Look at the gap between P2 and P4. Andrew Engst, 16 points behind Marcellus Breuning, only 8 points between him and Alex Cameron in P5. You can see Hideki Kovisa in P4 as well. It's very close at the moment in the Formula 2 Championship, with Marcellus Breuning leading the way.
And we have a Constructors' Championship that we follow in this series. It is determined not by teams, but by nation. So there you can see the UK is leading things, with Claridge and Price contributing quite a few points up there. Trangrade is the only one helping out for Norway. Same thing with Cocci for Italy. Now, the United States has had a lot of competitors throwing their hat into the ring, but unfortunately, they really haven't had the best of results to be able to get themselves up higher here in the top 5. France has 2 drivers who have been contributing, but the majority has been Dudignon, naturally, since he is fighting in the top 5 for the championship. So, with that, we also have the race details here today. Johan, we might have new viewers, so educate them.
Yeah, well, welcome if there's any new viewers to the Lotus 49 Championship. This is round 8 of our 12-round championship. A little bit before we looked at the standings, the 2 watermarks, that means that there's 2 drop weeks in this championship. The 2 worst results of all the drivers will be removed, and what's left is the 10 best results. The race distance today, however, at Imola is 20 laps. The setups for the drivers are open. That means that they can twist the knobs just to their liking. They will not have to make a pit stop during the race, and the scoring is open, with 40 points going to the victor today.
And if you enjoy this type of racing, of course, you can catch more of it right here on the iRacing Esports Network. We definitely want to encourage you to subscribe to this channel. There's a big red button that says subscribe. If you aren't subscribed yet, click that. It's very easy. It'll show up in your YouTube feed, and every bit of racing, including World Championship stuff, here on the iRacing Esports Network should show up. Quick correction on our overlays. It should be Cameron in P5 in the F2 Championship. Our apologies to Cameron and his fans that he didn't show up there. So with that, should be Rossi, not Cameron. It was Cameron that showed up down there. Even I'm getting confused. So we're watching Ove Trangrade do his qualifying. He's sitting in second at the moment behind Michel Dudignon. Not a big surprise there. Mick Claridge below each of them, and he's really got to hustle if he wants to continue to climb in the points here. Nicola Cocci brings himself a little bit higher, up into 4th. Price isn't doing too bad considering what he is battling out there. I think we were both surprised in the warm-up, Johan, to see him even show up.
Yeah, exactly. And not only showing up with the illness that he's currently battling it with, but also just extremely quick. Dave Price sitting in P5 so far, which especially looking at his championship aspirations and the championship battle that he's currently in, that's really good news for him, that he doesn't have to use one of his drop week jokers for the race today at Imola.
Most of our drivers have their 2 laps in. Jamie Hall is our highest at the moment, that has yet to take his 2nd lap. Should be able to get that one as we watch him work his way down to Aqua Minerale. He's sitting in 7th, and this looks about typical for his pace because he is usually right with Rob Olenek. Those 2 are almost attached at the hip, it seems, the entire season.
Exactly. Well, that's a good battle that we've seen the whole season so far. That's good news. The 2 drivers coming over from the Camel TG series, both reasonably quick here in the Lotus 49 series as well. And I'm kind of waiting for both drivers that are showing their skill in the Camel GT series to just move up themselves a little bit more, and get more regularly into the podiums this season. Jamie Hall coming out of Rivazza here. Just a long straight now with a slight kink to the right before he comes across the line for his second time lap here. He did a 1:39.4 in his first lap. This time around, a 1:39.1. So 4th place for Jamie Hall. Good lap there.
Wow, that is a great improvement in pace. That jumps him up multiple rows. Believe as far as drivers who still need to make a second lap, there are none. Everybody's got theirs in that should be able to do it. Bruce Nelson won't get his second one in as he only just finished his first lap. That means our qualifying is indeed over as the clock ticks down the final 10 seconds. Your starting grid is going to be thusly then. Michel Dudignan starts on the pole with Ove Trangarade in second. Mick Claridge starts row 2 in third, with Jamie Hall starting in fourth. Nicola Cocci will be P5, and Dave Price, as we mentioned, is gutting through a few health problems and starting at least sixth. Rob Olenek will be 7th, with Philip Lake starting 8th, and Marco Kika in 9th. Bruce Nelson rounds out our top 10.
Ian Haycox is the first driver outside of the top 10. He starts this race in P11 just before Michael Morrison. A.G. Bear qualified in P13 and he shares row 7 with Paul Foster. The last row of the grid is filled by Scott Velez and Daniele Guttuso, who didn't set a lap time, not because he didn't try, but because both laps of the driver that is in his home race were invalidated.
Of course, we have a split grid today. Unfortunate that we won't see many of our F2 drivers out there in the field, since we like to follow that championship. Of course, the split means that they separate this by iRating, which is iRacing's way of determining your skill level, so that everybody kind of gets to drive close to where they should be competitive. Waiting for the rest of the cars to grid up out there today. A little bit of a small field, but not terribly small. This is what the fields used to be like here in the Lotus 49. Lately, it's been a lot larger, which is honestly a boon, at least for the fans, giving us all kinds of great racing up and down the field with a lot more cars out there. You see those packed stands with virtual fans here at Imola and the beautiful scenery in the background. I love all the trees around here. Just having good scenery around adds to the sense of speed. With the lights coming up now, the engines start to rev. Green flag is out here for round 8 of the Lotus 49 World Cup. Dudignan with a fantastic start off the line. Ove Trangarade not so great. Mick Claridge already up alongside him, and he's got the inside and is fully passed by the time they hit Tamburello. He's going to be able to move up into second place. Are they going to get smoothly through this tricky chicane? It looks like it is clean.
Yeah, Dave Price in P6 had a very good start. He almost immediately caught Jamie Hall and Nicola Cocci, but was being blocked by both drivers. Oh, several drivers spinning. Nicola Cocci hitting, I think it is Dave Price. Also, Mick Claridge in the gravel there. Several cars getting caught out. Bruce Nelson is caught up with Dave Price. Almost Michael Morrison, who was hit there as well.
Yeah, and Dave Price had to take a tow. Bruce Nelson looks like he might not be able to continue. That is a number of our top drivers in the championship taken out early. You can see a few are able to continue on. Let's take a look at the replay. This is very reminiscent of one of the broadcast races that we had with Grip TV a number of seasons ago. Here we're watching Nicola Cocci. I think, did this start with Mick Claridge? Is that where it began?
I think Mick Claridge just completely spun it on his own, and Nicola Cocci did it as well. Both drivers hitting the first apex of the Variante Villeneuve too hard, and the car bounced, and both lost control. They didn't hit any other cars initially, but both looped it around themselves, and then disaster struck behind them.
And you could see that was Dave Price there, absolutely T-boning Nicola Cocci. For Cocci and Price, who are in the hunt for the championship, this is absolutely going to be a drop week.
Absolutely, and especially for Dave Price, because you can see here, he slightly touches Nicola Cocci. He very slowly continues rolling, but he just gets lifted up by Bruce Nelson, who cannot avoid him, and that damages the suspension of Price in such a way that he cannot continue. He's currently sitting in the pits.
And I think another driver has fallen victim to that same chicane. AJ Bear finds himself turned around and he gets going once again. There you see him returning to the track well down the order. So right now our leader, go ahead.
No, I want to say, like AJ Bear instead, there was in Tamburello corner that he went around. He was actually fighting with Philippe Lake. He was trying to make an overtaking maneuver stick, but luckily for AJ Bear, he can continue in contrast to Dave Price and Bruce Nelson.
I tell you what, Nicola Cocci it probably hates the Villeneuve chicane because there was another spin in front of him. We've had so much action there, we've barely been able to cover the racing. And he ran into the car ahead of him who was slowing up to avoid the spinner. So Cocci finds himself with even more damage and avoids another spin. This time it's Paul Foster with Michael Morrison also find himself turned the wrong direction. Are we sure we got the top split?
It was Paul Foster getting very loose there in Aqua Minerale, and Michael Morrison trying to avoid him, but in the end he was just clipped by Foster there. Took a long time before Morrison and Foster could both continue. And Bruce Nelson is still on track, crabbing his way to the pits. I think that his race is over though, with the way his suspension is looking.
I'm going to watch the replay one more time from on board the Egyptian liveried car. Yeah, just thought he was able to get around in that tiny little touch. Well, it's been a comedy of errors in the middle of the pack, but up at the front, it's been smooth sailing for Michel Dudignon and Ove Tranqueray. They are separated by just over 2 seconds. And Jamie Hall is following them for a nice third place, a podium position on the cards here for the UK driver.
We were talking about it at the beginning of the broadcast, but it seems like the Camel GT drivers are going for the podium today, with Rob Olenek not far behind them in P4 currently. But because of all the errors, it is being stretched out a little bit in front of the field. One of the closest battles that we have at the moment is between Marco Kika and Philip Blake. That's the battle for P5. Marco Kika is still in front of that one. But Philip Blake is looking very handsomely, trying to take away the P5 position.
Pretty soon, they might come across a bit of a roadblock. You were telling me a little bit behind the scenes about how Bruce Nelson had a great name. Unfortunately, he's not living up to it because he is crawling around, trying to limp his car back. He's been going 30 miles an hour now for the last 5 minutes just to try and get to pit lane.
Ooh, Marco Kika has a really bad story. The really bad accident in Variante Alta just overshot the first apex, and that gave Philip Lake the opportunity to shoot by on the exit. That's the overtake done a lot earlier than I thought it would happen.
I'm going to watch the replay here. As you can see, just coming off of Aqua Minerale goes defensive. See one car going way wide there in the foreground. Unfortunately, I think that defense may have hurt him. Yeah, just a little bit too much curb. That offers the opportunity.
Marco Kika is looking feisty though. He senses on the inside once again in Tamburello, and he actually makes it stick. Great move there from the Finnish driver, just sending it Ricciardo-like on the inside, getting that P5 position back immediately.
Yep, Phil Lake's going to have to work harder than that to keep the Finn back. And now they've got Mick Claridge clawing his way forward after his spin on the first corner. And it switches yet again with Marco Kika seeing Phil Lake send one up the inside of Tosa. And Kika cannot get the power down without slipping around.
Great battling from both drivers there. Just trying it in different corners. Within one lap, we've seen overtakes in 3 different corners. Mick Claridge seems to be the quicker of the trio. You can see that Marco Kika is starting to drive a little bit defensively to try and keep the grid behind him.
Yeah, I was going to say that battling certainly helping Mick Claridge as he's already all over the gearbox of Kika.
Sorry, Nicola Cocci spins it around and was trying to make an overtaking maneuver stick on Ian Haycox. And under braking of Aqua Minerale, he lost control hard into the gravel. Luckily for the Italian, he did not hit a wall and he still can continue.
Watch the replay. Oh, wonder if that damage just is making the car very hard to control. He's been having lots of trouble. We're going to watch Haycox now.
Yeah, he loops it around while going here through the Variante Alta, and that immediately gives Nicola Cocci the position that he was trying to get a few corners before.
A quarter of the field has taken to the pit lane. Michael Morrison, Paul Foster, Bruce Nelson, and Dave Price are all in there. Now, you and I were talking a little bit as we watch this battle here between Claridge and Lake. Claridge and Kika, who he just overtook. These cool conditions. We were mentioning how some of the drivers actually don't like them, and how it's sort of counterintuitive about the grippy conditions are almost worse for this car.
Yeah, you would almost say that, especially as a race car driver myself, you would say that in iRacing, lower conditions, colder conditions usually mean that there's more grip and it's easier to drive. It's quicker, it's more grip, and I personally prefer it that way. But drivers sometimes say that these colder conditions actually make the car a little bit more difficult to drive, because increased grip also means that the car can snap a little bit quicker than you might be used to in warmer conditions. That's actually something that we've seen several times already this race, with drivers just completely losing control of their car while braking for a corner.
And that's why I suspect that we're seeing so many spins. So as Mick Claridge now gets himself up to 6, he's got a long ways up to Michel Dudignon. I'm not sure if he's going to really be able to challenge him unless Michel makes a mistake. And judging by that fastest lap at the top of the screen, it doesn't look like he's intent on making any mistakes today, especially after losing out on the win last week.
Battle going on for P8 at the moment. Scott Velez and Daniele Guttuso. Now these were the two drivers starting on the last row of the grid. Currently they're sitting at P8 and P9, really staying out of trouble and having a good race with each other. Scott extremely close there on the rundown towards the Tamburello corner. Not able to get past the Italian, who did have a bad qualifying because both of his laps were not counted because of off tracks.
Well, he's got his fellow countryman coming up behind him, Nicola Cocci. Despite multiple spins and contacts, gains ground braking into Villeneuve, gets a good run off the corner, but he sees a defense from the car of Scott Velez, who is not willing to give that away easily. Gattuso up ahead of him, starting to run away. Another look down the inside into Piratella, but just not quite close enough to Scott.
Yeah, but look at the great exit here from Nicola Cocci. He can try and move on the inside of Acqui Minerale, and this time he makes it stick. He doesn't loop his car around. In front of him, there's Daniel Gattuso going extremely wide. And Nicola Cocci says thank you, and that's 2 overtakes, 2 positions in the span of 2 corners.
A lot less stress for Nicola, because now he's only got to focus on driving his car up 9 seconds to try and catch Kika for the next few laps. We're not even halfway through this thing yet as we jump up to 5th place. Lake and Claridge still stuck together, cannot seem to get away from one another.
No, but
down the front stretch, though, yeah, he's got a great run.
Yeah, exactly. I think that this time it's done deal for Mick Claridge. A lot more speed there on the exit of Rivazza, and he actually makes the move stick already before they start braking for Tamburello corner. Was expected. Mick Claridge, of course, was around 7 tenths, 8 tenths of a second quicker in qualifying. But has quite a bit of speed, and he shows it here. So he gets past Philip Lake, and let's just see now how the gap develops between Lake and Marco Kika in P6 and P7. If those two drivers once again bunch up towards each other and start fighting like we saw earlier in the race.
It almost looked like Lake may have facilitated that pass a little bit, knowing how fast Mick is. And he is indeed pulling away very fast from Phil Lake. Almost a second between them already. We saw up at the top of the screen, Dudignon set another fastest lap last time by. He is on a tear up there at the front. He may not have his main competition around him to challenge, but it seems like he is not resting on his laurels. There we see our leader in the appropriately number 1 car. Ove Trengere, the next nearest, almost 2.5 seconds back in the number 10, actually, which surprises me that Ove is rated this low.
Exactly. Well, finishing P2, of course, will help the Norwegian bump up his I-rating a little bit. One thing that I wanted to mention, I was actually looking at the lap times of Michel Dudillon, and it might fly a little bit under the radar because at the moment he's driving alone in front of the field, 3 seconds between him and Ove Trengere. But the consistency that the French driver is showing is absolutely awesome to watch. He has, apart from one lap where he had traffic and last time around that he made a slight mistake, been in the 38.5s and 38.6s every single lap. That's only 2/10 slower than he was in qualifying, with of course the extra fuel that he's currently running with. The French driver is really consistent and also extremely quick so far this race.
And as we saw another overtake there as Phil Lake lost out to Marco Kika. Let's take another look at the replay. Coming down to Tamburello, this seems to be the popular spot. And Kika likes this move. This is the second time we've seen him do that. Just slide up the inside with some late braking.
It just seems that the Finn is really consistent and really strong on the braking, and especially in Tamburello corner where you have such a long braking distance before you can finally steer in. That's really one of the spots where you can make the difference.
Boy, Lake is not sitting down and taking it easy, as he has been pressuring Marco Kika to try and get that one back. He took a look, way late on the brakes. Marco Kika too hot down into Alta, and this is going to give the inside back to Phil Lake. It's a drag race down to Ravazza. Is he brave enough to try and seal the deal? That's the question. They almost come together. They touch, and Phil Lake finds himself sliding into the grass. I know how hard it is to break into that corner. I wondered, Johan, if they were going to be able to take that one side by side.
Yeah, it's difficult to really point at a guilty party there. I think just both cars sliding, especially because you don't have the downforce that you might have in other cars in that corner. That's just so extremely difficult. And luckily for Philippe Lake, he had some contact on his suspension there from Marco Kika, but he didn't hit the wall when he went sliding into the grass, and it seems like he can continue even though he's currently driving around in P8.
Well, that's very good news for Marco Kika, who now can try and work his way forward. There you see Phil Lake slipping down to that 8th position. This is Marco Kika working his way out of Tosa. I don't think he's going to catch Mick Claridge, who's already actually 6 seconds up the road. In fact, we got a little bit of a battle for third going on right now. The podium under threat. Jamie Hall has his fellow Camel GT driver Rob Olenek right underneath him. They hit Alta here. Olenek just about 3/10 behind. Look at that, less than a car length through that chicane. Just about to hit the halfway point. These two already 12 seconds back. Oh, and you spotted a wreck with Ian Haycox farther down the field.
Yeah, last time around when he was on the rundown towards turn 8, that is Piratella. Ian Haycox just, you can see here the remaining part of the crash, just completely lost control under braking, and well, once he hit the grass there was no slowing this Lotus 49 anymore. So the driver just came in hard contact there with the barrier, flipped his car several times, and that's the end of the race for you.
Sad to see. That is another driver out, our 5th driver to retire today. AJ Bear, the last of them, continuing on. We jump back up to this battle for third place. Jamie Hall and Rob Olenek, and Jamie's starting to go defensive in some corners. Tosa obviously making him feel a little bit under threat.
And I'm looking behind him as well. Mick Claridge isn't that far behind, and especially if both these drivers are fighting like they're currently doing, the Brits will be catching up with these two very soon.
Down into Aqua Minerale. Mick Claridge only 2 seconds behind and gaining very fast. I'm sure he'd love to get on the podium once again. It's been not the best of seasons for Mick. Missed out on a win last week when he made a little bit of contact with Michel Dudignan, and we saw Dimitri Houdaloutis, who's not here today, sneak through from 3rd place to take the win. This battle continuing down into Ravazza. Rob Olenek not quite close enough, maybe trying to set himself up for the exit down the front stretch.
Different racing lines there through the last corner of the track. Rob Olenek a lot tighter, cuts the curb zone quite a bit more than his rival, but it didn't help him because He got a little bit loose doing so and could only go back on the throttle later than Jamie Hall. He tries to stay in his draft though. That helps him a little bit to catch up towards Tamburello, but not enough to put his car side by side here. Single file, there's not a long run from here towards Variante Villeneuve. We've seen moves happen before in Tosa where drivers just brake towards the rival here and win track position.
Absolutely. And in half a lap, Mick Claridge cut down a full second of that gap. He is flying right now. It is now down to 0.6, another half second gone. Unless these guys really make it a headache for him, I think this is going to be quick work for the British Bulldog here.
But we were talking about it before the race started, like how difficult it is to overtake here. And of course, Mick Claridge is quicker than the two drivers in front of him. But that difference in speed, is that enough speed difference to actually make an overtaking maneuver stick? Or is it enough speed difference to just bunch up towards them and then not being able to overtake?
Well, we'll find out. He's managed to get through a number of cars already as they slide through the Alta chicane. No slowdowns for anybody this time through. They're going to stay in order. Jamie Hall third, Rob Olenek fourth, Mick Claridge in fifth position. They break for Ravazza. Now everybody focusing on this second apex for the run down the front stretch.
Rob Olenek has learned from his move last time around. He stayed a lot further from cutting the curb zone than he did in the previous lap. Look at him, he's a lot closer to Jamie Hall this time around. Mick Claridge tries a different racing line over the start-finish straight. He stays out of the draft, but Rob Olenek gets closer and closer. One car length between him. He tries it around the outside. Brakes quite a bit later, side by side, going through Tamburello. This time they have the first apex side by side, second apex side by side, third apex stays side by side, but on the outside is Rob Olenek. More speed, making the move stick.
Philip Lake's trying to come back at him. Jamie Hall, excuse me, as he's now got to defend as well from Mick Claridge, and he's not able to take it, but he is able to defend. Mick Claridge says, no, you're not, looks to the inside of Tosa, almost forces him wide. They do not touch, but he finds the acceleration, and Mick Claridge is now into fourth. That's one down.
Yeah, Jamie Hall just leaving open slightly too much of a gap for Mick Claridge there. If he just stayed more to the left, Mick Claridge would have had to brake earlier and wouldn't have an overtaking opportunity there, but just sliding too much to the racing line, and well, that's all the space that Mick Claridge needed to get P4 there.
Tense moments here halfway through the race, and Claridge is looking very likely to manage to get himself back onto that podium after a lap one error through Villeneuve. And he lost a little bit of time to Olenek. We saw him gain quickly on Jamie Hall. Let's see if Olenek, maybe a little bit faster than Hall, could run away as they struggle to get the car woed up down here into Ravazza.
Almost Mick Claridge losing it there. You can see that the gap between him and Rob Olenek immediately increases by 1 or 2 car lengths. I think that this time around Rob Olenek will be safe from Mick Claridge on the run down towards Tamburello. Jamie Hall is a little bit too far behind to really immediately try and make a move on Mick Claridge. And that almost makes me wonder, Joe, if Jamie Hall just wasn't holding these two drivers up, because the gap between him and the two drivers in front is well, increasing quite rapidly.
Yeah, I'm starting to suspect the same thing as they pull away from the number 7 car. Not missing anything up front. Michel Dudignon still leads, and Trankerade's gap back to him is about 4.2 seconds. So those drivers slowly creeping apart from one another. Nobody seems able to challenge Michel unless we get a mistake from the Frenchman. Now with 8 laps to go.
Just want to give a quick update about some of the drivers that had trouble early in the race. Most of the drivers have retired, except Bruce Snelson. He has repaired his car that was crabbing early in the race. He is back out on track, 5 laps behind Michel Dudignon, driving around in P13, but he's looking towards overtaking Ian Haycox very soon.
Oh, and I think he's going to get AJ Bear as well, because AJ Bear just had a problem of his own coming out of Ravazza. The AstroTurf on the outside did not have as much grip, and I think the incident limit claimed him because he disappeared.
Yeah, I think so as well.
Well, that brings us back to Mick Claridge. He was 9/10 back. It's now 5/10 back. Half a second between himself and Olenek. It's proving a little bit harder for him to gain on the number 5 car. So I think this is going to be a tougher ask for him to try and get onto the podium. Oh, and Phil Lake with another issue in Hrvatsa.
Yeah, exactly. He had it, of course, earlier in the race when he was side by side with Marco Kika. This time around, he did it all on his own. Just under braking, the car snaps around. He had to wait for both Daniele Gattuso and Scott Velez, who are still battling with each other before both drivers passed him. That relegates Philippe Lake back to P10.
Almost looked like he downshifted too many gears or something, the way it just flew out from under him very, very quickly. But whatever the case, didn't hit anything, so he continues on as the drivers continue to drop here in the top split in round 8. Surprising me just how much trouble this race has been giving some of the better drivers in this series.
Yeah, talking about good drivers, Mick Claridge with a great exit there through Aqua Minerale, and on the inside of Variante Alta, he makes the move stick on Rob Olenek. Hard over the curb zone, and that gives Rob Olenek immediately an opportunity to put it side by side on the run around towards Hrvatsa. We'd seen this before early in the race, then it went wrong. This time around, they keep it side by side, braking towards the corner. Mick Claridge on the outside gets forced right a little bit by Rob Olenek. But Rob cannot make a stick there on the inside. More momentum on the outside means that Mick Claridge stays in front and he gets P3.
Boy, Rob Olenek, very gutsy to try to come back down to the inside of Hrvatsa, but nobody is able to intimidate the Bulldog away as Mick Claridge finally gets himself onto the podium. Unfortunately, for all the battling that he had to do to get here, it now means that he is 13 seconds back from train grade with only 6 laps left. I do not think he is going to be climbing any higher today.
Philippe Lake in P10 just had a spin. We saw it on the broadcast, but he's trying to fight his way forward. Daniele Gattuso had a bad exit through Hrvatsa. Philippe Lake is trying to capitalize on that, very close between the two. Braking for Tamburello. Now Philippe Lake is just a little bit more cautious. He brakes, I think, 20-30 meters later. Hard over the curb stones there on the inside of Tamburello. And look at Scott Velez. He's enjoying this battle between the two drivers. The Canadian driver can just drive away while Lake and Gattuso are fighting it out with each other.
Yeah, right now Gattuso is Velez's best friend, especially if he makes it difficult like this on Phil Lake. The more he defends and the more he battles, the more time it gives Velez to try and streak away. But that battle seems to be over at this point because Lake gets himself a better run out of Tosa, and that job is done. He is now into 9th. Towards Aqua Minerale, he sets his sights on the number 11 car. This is actually going to be a pretty good race for Scott Velez, we should say. Running 8th in the top split. Don't usually see him a whole lot racing with the top guys, but he's been faring well, helped out by attrition, but also keeping it pointed forward.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's one of the things that we said at the beginning of the race. Both Scott and Daniela starting from the back row of the grid, but just keeping it clean, keeping it steady, keeping it consistent, and with that overtaking 6-7 drivers already in the race, and that has really helped them so far.
Well, Phil Lake is wasting no time in getting up to him, that gap shrinking with every meter on the track. They cross the start-finish line to start another one. As did Gattuso have an issue? Yeah, it looks like out of Hrvatsa, another driver finds that acceleration zone just a little bit tough to find the grip.
It is a difficult corner though, because the balance in that corner between having just too much, like having a good exit and too much is such a fine line, and it's really easy to just spin it here around. Luckily for Gattuso, he can continue. Without any damage. He braked just in time. The wall got really close, but I think he just braked just in time to avoid hitting the barrier. He can continue with losing a little bit of time and losing connection to Lake and Velez.
Yeah, it looked like he climbed that inside curb quite a bit. It surprises me that inside curb is causing issues because it looks very low slung. It doesn't look like it's very tall at all.
Yeah, but it does have like a little bump on the inside, and maybe that bump, especially if, for example, you set up your car a little bit hard, can unsettle it, and especially if you at the same time go on throttle and settle it in such a way that's just really easy to loop it around.
Let's see if it's going to be easy for Phil Lake to get by Scott Velez. He is now firmly on the gearbox of that number 11 as they come down to Rivazza. Not going to look to the inside, going to set himself up for the exit. And as that is happening, there's also a battle going on ahead of them. We'll stick with this right now. Nope, it looks like we're going to go to that battle because Marco Kika overtaken by Nicola Cocci down into Tamburello. Nice move.
Yeah, Nicola Cocci has been, suffering with some problems early on in the race, but he's fighting back now. He was clawing back the gap towards Marco Kika, and just a great run out of Rivazza gave him enough speed to try it here on the inside of Tamburello corner. Break later, very clean move from the Italian, bringing him to P6.
I can report, here's actually, we've got to go and replay as Velez just didn't have enough down the front stretch. Phil Lake managed the overtake even before the braking into Tamburello. He is now in 8th position. Now down to 4 laps to go, as a number of drivers are trying to do what they can to make up for lost ground. Although I think they've hit an impasse. Nicola Cocci's got another 12 seconds up to Jamie Hall. Phil Lake 15 seconds up to Marco Kika.
Yeah, it seems like most battles have finished for now. Most drivers have overtaken the drivers in front of them that were slower. The closest battle that we at the moment have is still, I think, the one between Mick Claridge and Rob Olenek. The gap is increasing slightly, but Rob Olenek isn't that much slower than Mick Claridge. Last time around it was 7/10, so it increased a little bit. The laps before it was just a few tenths of a second per lap, and if Rob Olenek can stay within this amount of distance of Mick Claridge until the end, he can put the pressure on and give Mick Claridge the feeling that if Mick Claridge makes a mistake, he gets back the podium position.
And since nobody's really that close to one another for a battle, let's run down the field in case you just joined us and update you on what's been happening with all of our drivers. This is our leader, Michel Dudignon, hasn't had a whole lot of screen time. Well, that's because he's had nobody to challenge him. It's been a romp for the Frenchman since the drop of the green, helped somewhat by a lap 1 incident with a number of the fast drivers. Ove Trangarade is currently in 2nd position. He's tried his best to keep Michel honest, but just hasn't had the pace today in these conditions at this Italian track. And his lead over him in the points is going to shrink. Mick Claridge has got himself back up to 3rd. He was one of those drivers that had problems, but it was all of his own making. It was in Villeneuve. He went off course, lost a number of spots and time, had to eventually make a number of overtakes to get here into 3rd place. Rob Olenek was trying to hold on to that 3rd place. He did his best, but you can see that gap continuing to increase behind Mick Claridge. Just really doesn't quite have the pace for the experienced veteran and multiple-time champion. Still, 4th, going to be a good day for Rob. Jamie Hall, another driver from the Camel GT along with Rob, has got a top 5 for himself, and one of the guys who has taken advantage of the attrition today to get himself into that 5th position. What's the next 5 look like, Johan?
Yeah, Nicola Cocci is also one of the drivers that had trouble lap 1 into Variante Villeneuve. He looped it around, but contrary to Mick Claridge, he did get collected by a few other drivers. Well, the damage has sent him back a little bit down the order at the beginning of the race, but he's been clawing his way back. Currently driving in P6 behind him, Marco Kika. Marco is having a good run, really profiting from the people in front of him making mistakes. Nice battles between Marco and Nicola Cocci and Philippe Blake. Philippe Blake behind him in P8, losing quite a bit of time after a spin twice, once after contact with Marco Kika and once after that on his own in Rivazza. He has overtaken 2 drivers to get back to the position that he started the race in. Scott Velez, one of the drivers we talked about, winning a lot of positions so far in this race, 6 positions so far, as he's trying a move there, almost inside of Variante Villeneuve on Philippe Blake in front of him. And another driver gaining 6 positions so far this race, Daniele Guttuso, started last on the grid without setting a qualifying time, currently driving in the top 10. And the last driver that's still out there on the asphalt is Bruce Nelson, having some trouble in lap 1, had to stay in the pits quite a while to repair his car, but he's still driving around in P11.
Yeah, I think the Dory Award definitely needs to go to Bruce today. Kept it out there, kept going, and he's going to scalp some positions to get himself an 11th. So, with that, white flag has flown, and Michel Dudignon just has one more to go to complete this win. With a 9-second gap, he is his own worst enemy at this point. Just has to be clean and running around. Even at a slow pace, he could still take this win. Climbs up towards Piratella as we ride on board, and this is one of the shots that I really love. I'm not sure if he's hot dogging. I don't think that's hot dogging. He barely saves it. Ooh. Trying to make it a little bit exciting here at the end. I don't think you want to do that too much, Michel. So, as I was saying, I love those onboards because in these cars you can really get a feel for how hard they are to drive with how much the hands are working. The driver's having to saw at the wheel. And another slide there, a little bit sloppy, heading through Alta. Not sure what's came over Michel here in the final lap, but whatever the case, he's only got 2 more apexes to worry about with Ravazza through the 1. And hopefully, as a number of drivers have had problems here out of the second apex, that's looking so much smoother for the Frenchman. He's going to take the win here in round 8. Michel Dudignon finally gets redemption here a week later and gets the win at Imola.
Behind him, over Trangeray does what he has to do if Michel Dudignon wins the race. He gets P2 and I think grabs the lead in the championship. Second place for the Norwegian.
Third place going to Mick Claridge. This is a good recovery for him, although it'll hurt his chances in the championship to try and get back in the hunt in the final rounds. Rob Olenek getting a 4th place. Jamie Hall, what a nice top 5 for those 2 guys. Nicola Kochi probably wishing it could have been better here at his home track. A 6th place, I have to imagine, a bit of a disappointment.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think that Nicola Kochi will not be happy with that 6th place out here in his home GP. I think Marco Kika will be happy with that 7th place that he scored. Some good battling for the Finnish driver and a good result to top it off. Bruce Nelson comes home 5 laps down on the leader, and Philip Lake finishes in the position that he started in, P8.
Drivers most happy is probably going to be Velez and Gattuso, going from 15th and 16th to 9th and 10th respectively. But that's going to complete our field. So, as we have a small break, we'll come back after we show you all the upcoming races here on the GSRC. But stick around after that because we'll have the official results as well as driver interviews here on the iRacing Esports Network. Welcome back to Imola. We just saw round 8 here of the Lotus 49 World Cup on the iRacing Esports Network, presented by the Global Sim Racing channel. And the winner after this was done was Michel Dudignon. If you're wondering how it'll be scored with the split, just wanted to update you that they will score it based on average lap time with the second split. So the points could be slightly different from what we see here. Regardless, Ove Trangrade got himself a second place with Mick Claridge finishing in third and Rob Olenek taking a fourth place. Jamie Hall was a little farther down, still getting a top 5. We talked about it though. The local driver, Nicola Kochi, finishing in 6th, which is honestly only one spot down from where he qualified, but still he could have had a lot better. Marco Kika manages a 7th place with Phil Lake finishing 8th. Scott Velez with a nice climb up to 9th. Same thing with Daniel Gattuso grabbing 10th. Johan?
Yeah, the last driver that finished the race on the asphalt was Bruce Snelson, coming home in P11. There's 5 drivers that didn't see the checkered flag. A.G. Bear was probably caught out by the incident limit, classified in P12. Ian Haycox went for a little flight in turn 8, classified in P13. Michael Morrison retired very early in the race in P14, and Paul Foster and Dave Price are finishing in P15 and 16 respectively.
And the podium for the other split was Hideki Koivisto, Philippe Urquhart, and Billy Bob Wright. With that, I believe we have nobody to talk to, actually. So hopefully we'll get somebody in. If any of our drivers are watching, definitely please hop in or ready for interview. I believe we have the link listed not only in the iRacing forums, but in our description. At least the YouTube chat often is where we post it. But despite having a little bit of attrition, we were talking about it during the break, Johan, we still got a pretty good race out there. The drivers coming back through the field really gave us some good moments.
And that's really something that I was thinking about. Like, this race showed that even if things go bad lap 1, it is a case of never giving up, because you saw several drivers like Mick Claridge and Nicola Kochi, those are probably the best examples, looping it around, losing 6-7 positions in the process. Just the rest of the race, they fought their way back, and both have quite respectable finishing positions if you take into consideration that they both spun. But not only them, people like Philip Lake as well went for a little spin during the race, fought their way back through the field, and not only had some great racing themselves, but just also had the results to show for it.
And it looks like we got our third place driver ready to talk to us, Mick Claridge. Oh, and a correction on the results. It was Billy Bob, David Rossi, and Hideki Koivisto who were on the podium in the other split. But we do have Mick Claridge ready to talk to us and see if we can figure out what happened with that first lap incident as we pull him into the booth here. He's managed to climb his way back up to third. Mick, we saw a little bit of talk about tightening the screw on your wheel. Was it an actual hardware problem that caused that lap 1 incident? Mick, do you have a copy? All right, see if we could get Mick Claridge to get himself mic'd up here. Avoid any drummer jokes, if you would. I know Mick is pretty talented out there, so should be able to get his mic working pretty soon. Of course, he jumped in pretty quickly before we dragged him in, so might be a little bit surprised to not have everything fully set up. Mick, do you have a copy? Looks like Mick fortunately doesn't have the mic quite working for the moment. Since nobody else is here, we'll just give him another couple seconds before he gets... There we go. Now we got Mick going. All right. Mick, we weren't sure if you were joking or if it was for real. It was something about mention on a screw on your wheel. Was it an actual hardware problem that caused your incident?
Yeah, oh, it was unbelievable. Yeah, I just I put on the forum that I've been using a G27 for like years and years, and Dave Price sent me a PM, that day, and just said, look, he's got a T300, sitting there doing nothing, I can borrow it or buy it off him or whatever, So we done the deal, and I've got it here, and I just literally bolted it on. I had it clamped up, with one of my cymbal stand clamps holding it on because I didn't have the clamp on the bottom, and then I finally drilled it onto the table here, and so when the race started, I'm thinking, why is the wheel feeling a bit wobbly? And then I don't even know if you know what the T300 was like, but there's like a bracket what holds the actual wheel to the other part of the wheel, and that was coming loose. And so as I was going around the lap, that caused the first incident. I didn't even realise that's what caused it. And then later on, I realised it was getting looser and looser, and I tried to tighten it up, and I was loosening it. So then I was like stuck in fourth gear for a good chunk of the lap, and then I finally realised and tightened it up, and then I was all right from then on. But it wasn't the only problem. I just had no grip whatsoever as well.
Well, that makes that recovery all the more impressive. And talk about the grip, because we were surprised with this being top split, how many drivers were making errors out there. We always talk about how the overcast making it grippy tends to kind of catch people out. Is that really, do you think, what made us see so many drivers have accidents? Or I mean, what are your thoughts on why we saw so many drivers find the grass in the wall?
Yeah, I think it's definitely that, because I don't think we get enough sort of overcast sessions in the week. If we're going to practice, we can do private tests and do it ourselves, but not many people do. So they just run with what the practice server gives you, and we've just had hot weather all week. So I reckon, definitely the cold weather caught a lot of guys out, because it was so snappy. The car was just so snappy on power. I've been running 19s and 19.5 psi in all the tyres. And Dave asked me, just before the race, what are you going to go with? And I just said, I'm going to try 18.5. And I tried that, and there was just no grip whatsoever, especially on the rear. It just had such a bite to it.
Mick, welcome in the booth. I also just had some few questions, because one of the most prolific moments of your race was that battle that you had halfway with Jamie Hall and Rob Olenek for that final podium position. How was it from your point of view? How was it battling in this track? Imola is one of the tracks that usually people say like it's difficult to overtake, especially with the chicanes, but you made it work out there.
Yeah, it was quite tough, because it's really weird. I was thinking about it as it was happening, because we're getting through all the slower cars at the start. It's just so alien, it's just so weird, and you just sort of think, there's 3 cars in front of you, so they're going to brake early, so you have to brake early, and wonder if you've done it right, and then the cars start coming towards you in the braking zones and stuff like that, so you have to really sort of like rethink what you're doing, through that. And then my point is, when I caught up with those guys, there was 2 of them, and I don't think I've fought with 2 guys for ages, it's only ever been Michelle or Michelle chasing me, or I'm chasing him, or whatever, so it's been such a long time since I've had a fight with 2 fast drivers that are in front, so I had to really work out what was going on. It just felt really weird, to be honest with you.
Well, what did it mean for you to have both drivers out there with you? Because the first time you caught up to them, it seemed like Jamie Hall was in front, Rob was second, and you were third in the train. And it seemed like Jamie Hall was short on gearing or something. The amount of overdrive that you had going into Tamburello corner, was the draft that strong if you have 2 cars in front of you, or did you have like a slightly different setup that just gave you more straight line speed?
I think it was the second gear I had in the set, because I've been running a 75 power ramp all week, with a little bit of preload, what I've never done before in my life. And we got to qualifying, and I just thought, I'll try 45 power ramp and just see what happens. And it was just stuck like glue, and I had to really watch the throttle in the second gears, but coming off the second gear corners, I think if anyone was still running like a 70, 75 power ramp, I think they was losing out there out the second gear corners.
Well, that is something for us to keep a note on for sure, because the setups obviously are making a difference out there. Congratulations on third place. Commiserations on having a little hard time to get there, but look forward to seeing you in a week's time.
Yeah, cheers, Joe. Yeah, it was annoying. We was all at around the same pace there, weren't we, the top 3, so it would have been a good fight, but never mind.
Yep, sometimes that's racing. That's Mick Claridge, though, in third place today, and that's going to end our interview. So with that, we're going to close up here on the iRacing Esports Network, which, if you haven't yet, remember that big red button I mentioned that says subscribe. Click that so that you get all the action here on IESN. Also, big thank you to the Lotus 49 community for bringing us on for another season of coverage. This one has been a topsy-turvy season for sure. And thanks to the companies that provide the software and hardware for our broadcasts. You can see them listed here on your screen. Additional thanks go to Eric Ekholm and June Lalonde who provide our wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a hold of more of their great work. Thanks to the team today, Johan, Amjad, and Dougie. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. You can also check us out on social media. We're on Twitter at GSR Channel, Facebook at Global Sim Racing Channel, and Instagram at GSRC_Grand. If you head on over to our YouTube page, that's the Global Sim Racing Channel. That is GSRC Broadcasting, if you're curious. There's our own big red subscribe button that you should also hit that you don't miss any of our races. The next race, though, is going to be Spa for this series. That is a popular one in this card. Very fun to drive. It'll be Saturday, November 10th. And this is important. We have the time change coming up. It'll be at 8:30 a.m. Eastern. So don't be caught out by that. We have upcoming races for other series listed on the screen, so check those out and mark them down on your calendar. However, until next time, race clean, race hard. See you on the track.